Good morning, everybody, and thanks for coming to my talk. The title of my talk is Designing Cauldrons for Horizon Forbidden West. But before we start, who here has played Forbidden West or Zero Dawn? Raise your hands. That's a very good number. Nice. All right, let's get started. Allow me to introduce myself. Dennis Micka, senior world designer at Guerrilla Games. And my game design career really started in 2013 when I entered at Guerrilla during Killzone Shadowfall. I went indie for a couple of years, creating a game called Karma Flow, the rock opera game. But I returned to Guerrilla because I was feeling homesick when Zero Dawn released in 2017 at the tail end of Zero Dawn and at the start of the Frozen Wilds DLC. And at the start of our, not most recent anymore, but one of the most recent projects, Horizon Forbidden West, where I ended up as the owner of the non-main quest Cauldrons. So I was working on Forbidden West for the entirety of the project, the entire 4 to 5 years, which was a fantastic experience. And let me show you what this talk is about exactly. So this talk is about, of course, the development of the optional cauldrons in Horizon Forbidden West. And I'll be zooming in on the Tallneck cauldron specifically. And this talk will be more about my personal experiences and thought processes, and less about the ins and outs of level design. And sprinkled throughout this talk, there will be a bunch of takeaways, stuff I've learned while working on the cauldrons. And before we start, what exactly is a cauldron? This is also a cauldron, but we'll be talking about these. So in the world of Horizon, cauldrons are these sci-fi AI-created robot foundries, basically Horizon's version of a dungeon. It's where our world's machines are being born. And your goal, playing as Aloy, is to delve into these dungeons, reach the cauldron's core to get your machine overrides, with which you can override machines in the world to get them to fight on your side. And gameplay-wise, cauldrons tend to be focused on exploration and traversal, don't have a lot of environmental puzzles, and always have one climactic boss to defeat. So this timeline features the entire production production phases of what I've been working on. And I'll be using this to highlight what this talk is going to be about. So I start with pre-production. There we go. Where I'll be talking about, of course, pre-production, about the pitching process, and about prototyping. Then I'll quickly go over Cauldron 1, because this is my first Cauldron, and it's where I learned a lot of lessons about how you should and shouldn't do Cauldrons. And then finally, the big star of this talk, the Tallneck Cauldron, Cauldron IOTA. And I'll show it from design, from paper design to ship level. So, the beginning. It's 2017, tail end of Zero Dawn, at the start of the Frozen Wilds. I helped finish it up, and we get to work on the Forbidden West. So, I initially applied for the quest design role, but I got hired as a world designer instead. And although the name somewhat implied what world design would be, I wasn't really sure. So let me show you the design team structure at Guerrilla real quick. So we have core design, and core design is responsible for the player system, combat, and user interface. Then we have quest design, who do the main quests, the side quests, and the tutorials. And then there's world design, which is also further split up into 3 disciplines. Dressing, they do the design of the actual world map, the thing you play, and they... so let me quickly check here. Design the world map and dresses it with encounters and explorables. Then we have Living World. They design the settlements and populate the settlements and the world with NPCs. And then there's my team, the activities team, and we do stuff like the Cauldrons and the Tallnecks and the Regala camps. So, when I was at Guerrilla, I learned that Cauldrons were part of world design, and I was super stoked about it, because I was a big fan of the Cauldrons in Zero Dawn. So when I asked them if I could do Cauldrons, I got I'm not sure. We haven't seen a lot of you yet. And fair enough, I was new at Guerrilla, I didn't have a whole lot to show for. But my persistence mustn't have gone unnoticed, so they told me I could do one, and if it was up to standards, I was to do them all. So we go to pre-production, studying Zero Dawn, because Zero Dawn has cauldrons, and that meant I was inheriting them from the designer who went on to become a systems designer. And studying cauldrons, I realized that they had this vibe, right? They are these super hard contrasting robot foundries, contrasting really hard with the overworld, the lush nature in the overworld. And they had this vibe, right? And I knew I needed to be able to own and replicate this vibe. So I realized that they all had this formula. You enter a cauldron, you dungeon crawl to the core, you override the core after defeating the boss to get your overrides, and then you're done. And they all adhered to this formula except Cauldron C. In Cauldron C, you get to the core. But what's weird about this cauldron is that it's defunct. There's no machines inside, but there's bandits inside. And once you get to the core, you need to backtrack the entire thing while dodging machines and bandits. Cauldron C was the most memorable, I think, of the Zero Dawn cauldrons, and I realized that if I wanted to make memorable cauldrons myself, I would need to also break this formula. So, pre-production. Still, prototyping. So the pre-production phase gave me the opportunity to play around with stuff that already existed in Zero Dawn to create new kinds of gameplay. New kinds of gameplay that might end up in the final game. It's no sound, no thanks. So in this prototype you see here, I grabbed the big chunky robot containers, removed the big chunky robot parts to create a moving platform. And this section inspired me to create one of the more memorable sections in Cauldron IOTA, which is you serving on a floating Tallneck head to the core while fighting off machines. Tech design is the team that helps us prototype these kinds of traversables. And teaming up with them super early on helped me create a bunch of these things to fill up a toolbox I could later pluck from while I was designing the levels themselves. So this is in the final level itself. And that brings us to the first takeaway. Make good use of your pre-production time. Start prototyping early to, like I told before, to fill up this toolbox of stuff you can later pluck from later during development. And meanwhile, I was putting together a very high-level pitch document to show my lead where I wanted to go with Cauldrons. And my initial pitch document wasn't much more than a one-pager per Cauldron, really. And keeping the Zero Dawn Cauldrons in mind, I came up with the following. A basic Cauldron, because I knew I was going to go nuts with the others. So I needed some sort of baseline to introduce players to Cauldrons, or reintroduce players to Cauldrons, but also to allow myself to get used to designing Cauldrons. Then the big star of this talk, the Tallneck Cauldron, Cauldron IOTA. A third Cauldron that got cut, because that happens in game development. A dying and overgrown Cauldron, Cauldron Chi. And a flooded Cauldron, Cauldron Kappa. And these I would use to get approved by the lead and the game director. And after this approval, I would be able to start with the next phase, which would be paper design. So Mu and IOTA would be the ones we'll be focusing on today. So let's start with the first one, called a Mu. Right, so I got to build my first cauldron, and to show you what worked and what didn't. Mu was deemed good enough, so it scored really well in the internal playtests, or external playtests, so I was allowed to do more cauldrons, which was great. But I also did make a lot of mistakes. For starters, Cauldron Mu was too big. I also, for starters, I showed the goal where you needed to go, the Cauldron score, the door at the end of this hallway you see hopefully see on the screen, was shown too late. So players got lost really, really bad at the start. Thank you. It was also too disorienting, because I was personally too obsessed with squeezing too much game time out of the expensive art pieces I had. So I was looping around the players too much, which was very confusing. Combat spaces were too small to comfortably fight machines in, and pacing was super off because I was cramping too many things into this small level. Well, it's not really small, but I was still cramping too many things in there. So this is the top-down map of Cauldron Mu. And the player path would be kind of like this. So as you might see, I did some looping at the corner at the bottom there and over here, which confused players a lot. So people got lost all the time. So I was urged by the game design director to smoothen out the start of the level. And we did this by cutting some parts of the level, which hurt, of course, because it's my baby. But this really rerouted the player faster to this point where we wanted you to see the core to the door to the core, which was here. So this really helped. So I wanted to show you the snippet of Cauldron Mu pre-first art pass, or actually after the first art pass. And this is exactly what I was talking about when I was talking about cramping too many things into this one level. So there's also a map here with a blue line where the camera starts, and a nifty blue line to show Aloy's path, for those who are interested. So you just got off a gigantic moving wrecking arm, a robotic arm, which could be considered climactic. And I immediately give you this conveyor challenge to climb around, right? The shield I've always liked, and you'll see in the next video I've kept it. But the way you flow out of this level, by going through this door, wasn't really nice either. And I'll show you later why exactly. Then you end up in this combat space, which felt too cramped, and I thought it would be a super interesting element to have this moving conveyors go through the combat space. But all it actually really did was split the combat space into two, so players always kind of kept to the left side of the space, not at all using the entire space, which was quite bad, of course. And then this is the second pass, where we took out the entire conveyor climb challenge to give the players some time to catch their breath, because pacing is a good thing. And this time you could go underneath the shield. So I've still kept the shield, so you can see the machines behind, the upcoming machines behind the shields for the next combat encounter. You could go underneath or around if you found this little tunnel on the left. And this little tunnel on the left gave you the opportunity to sneak attack one of the machines, one of the burrowers in the combat area. And this is my personal little homage to the Arkham Asylum vent kills. And I also replaced the super jumpy long leg with a less jumpy shell walker. So, and to also further show you how I decreased the size of the level, because when I showed my block out to my environment artist the first time, I nearly gave him a heart attack, and he said, "Dennis, let's make sure this is your biggest cauldron." So to show you that I've learned of this, this is the second cauldron, the Tallneck cauldron, Cauldron Chi, and Cauldron Kappa. And I'd like to believe that with every cauldron I made, I was getting a bit better at creating smaller spaces without sacrificing the cauldron experience. Takeaway number 2, bigger isn't always better. And then the star of this talk, the Cauldron. All right, so for the people that haven't played Forbidden West or Horizon and aren't familiar with the franchise, this machine over here is the Tallneck. It's the biggest, friendliest machine in the game. And Tallnecks and Cauldrons were fan-favorite activities in Zero Dawn. So in my mind, the math was super easy. I grab a Tallneck, I smash it together with a Cauldron to create a Tallneck Cauldron and win, right? And we all strive to create the coolest content, don't we? So I pitched the following crazy idea. So what if we write a freaking Tallneck out of a freaking Cauldron? And it almost didn't happen. Although everyone agreed that it sounded super cool, it also sounded super expensive, especially for a side quest, a side Cauldron. So the Tallneck Cauldron idea got shelved, and I turned my attention to another Cauldron, Cauldron 4. And just when I was about to give up on the Tallneck Cauldron, production did some scoping exercises, and an overworld Tallneck got cut together with my Cauldron. So we got some previously we freed up some previously blocked budgets. I reproposed the Tallneck Cauldron, and we got a green light. So, and I realized not every project has this luxury, but when stuck, move on to something else. Working on something else helps you free your mind of that's been milling over the same issues over and over. And you'll probably even learn some stuff when coming back to your previous project. All right, so phase 1, paper design. With the paper design, we tried to create a high-level top-down map of your level, and this is also what we use to pitch to our lead. And when this is approved, you're allowed to go to the high-level blockout stage, where we get where we try to get a feel for the flow and size of the level. And starting with paper design, I bumped into some problems I would need to answer with my design. And I really liked the machine buddy fantasy, and I really liked the idea that you help build a big friendly Tallneck. But there was one problem, because Cauldrons don't need alloy. Because Cauldrons are these AI-run, sophisticated machine factories, they don't need humans. So I would need to make its production halted somehow. And Aloy wouldn't be interested in helping a machine get built, because our only reason to go into Cauldrons is to get those machine overrides. So I would need to make it Aloy's problem as well, somehow. And how do we get Aloy on top of a Tallneck as it's exiting a Cauldron? Because it's usually the Cauldron core platform that lifts her out. It doesn't make sense for her to be on top of a Tallneck. So this is also something I needed to answer. And then Aloy would need the Tallneck to solve her problem. There would be a solution. But what could the Tallneck do to help Aloy? So let me show you version 1 of IOTA. There was actually also a version 0, but that didn't even get through the paper design phase, because I was about to make the same issues, the same problems I made with column U. It was going to be too big, too complex, and I was basically creating a Zelda dungeon, and Horizon isn't Zelda, so this didn't get approved. This one did. And in this version, I had a strain of Hephaestus infection. Hephaestus is the main antagonist, or one of the main antagonists of our game. Take over the Cauldron to produce combat machines instead of big friendly Tallnecks. And let's see. The idea was that Aloy would use the Tallneck's EMP, its electromagnetic pulse, to purge away all the physical infestation. So I figured Tallnecks would exit Cauldrons through a missile silo-like door that would be above the core. A door Aloy wouldn't be able to open, so you'd have to find a way around it. You find your way around and rappel in to get an overview of the problem straight away, which would be the infection. And by rappelling straight into the core, I thought I was breaking. I thought I was trying to break that formula I mentioned before, where the core usually would be the last room you entered. So you would see the unfinished Tallneck tucked away to the side as you move closer to the core. And then you can partly traverse this, the wreck that's holding the Tallneck to go to this side of the Cauldron. And as a reminder, this is a high-level blockout. So it's just there to show the flow and the size. So it doesn't really need to be Super playable, but it's just to communicate the flow and size of the level. So here I would have some puzzles and traversables, and story-wise, you would free or liberate this part of the cauldron to get it to produce Tallneck parts again. And as you follow these parts back to the core, the fins you use to climb to the Tallneck's head, you would see the fins getting installed onto the Tallneck as you get back to the core. And with the fins installed, you can now reach the other side of the cauldron using by partly climbing the Tallneck. And again, you would liberate some machinery on the other side of the cauldron, and this time it would produce Tallneck neck segments. And again, you would be looped back to the core to see those neck segments being installed onto the Tallneck. You've now helped build the Tallneck. But first, you would have to defeat the boss, Hephaestus sent in to kick your butt for messing with this grand scheme. So you defeat the boss, you climb to the Tallneck's head, which you're now able to do, and initiate the EMP. The EMP zaps away all Hephaestus infection, and then you go to the core for your precious machine overrides. But because we wanted that exit, the epic Tallneck exit, that meant you'd have to climb the Tallneck again. And that flow was pretty bad, right? Because you kind of just want to exit the cauldron after the climax and not do the thing you've already done before. So this one just didn't feel right. And to make matters worse, the narrative team ended up wanting to use Hephaestus in the main quest. And we didn't want a side quest to take away the power of a main quest. So without Hephaestus, my entire design fell flat. So what worked and what didn't? Looping the player around the cauldron had a narrative reason, which is very good. And helping build a Tallneck was also quite cool. What didn't work was the flow at the end, where you had to climb the Tallneck again. And the narrative, of course, because the narrative wanted to have Hephaestus for the main quest. So on to the next takeaway. Be adaptable, because game design is filled with hurdles, as you might already know. You'll need to be able to adapt and work on the next project. So my next project was the second version of Cauldron IOTA. And I came up with this. So let me talk you through it. So we moved the cauldron to the north of the map, to where it is now in the final game. And with the Hephaestus infection gone, I needed a new reason why this cauldron was halted and not producing Tallnecks. And the answer came from the main game itself, because in Horizon Forbidden West, the world's in a bad state because it's missing the main AI, Gaia, is missing her AI subfunctions and causes the world to spiral out of control with all sorts of environmental disasters. So then in my mind, I figured maybe an earthquake could halt the Tallneck's production. And the story of this earthquake started outside of the cauldron as you enter this crevice to get inside of the cauldron. So you rappel in, and this time you rappel straight into the Tallneck room. You climb around the Tallneck to get a hint of the production area there on the right. It's behind this shield. It's a bit hard to see with this lighting, but it's there. It's shielded off, and the only way forward is to the core. You get to the core, you defeat the boss machine, protecting it. You hack the core for your overrides, but then an earthquake or an aftershock happens, and then the platform you're on that's supposed to lift you out of the cauldron grinds to a halt. Your quest would become find a way out of the cauldron. So I really liked the idea of exploring what's underneath or in between the cauldron, and with this platform up, you now have a newly revealed space you can now enter. So in you go, through this tunnel, and be looped back to the Tallneck room. Spoiler. To see the Tallneck hanging in its frame, and above it there would be the door you couldn't open, slightly ajar, got the rays lighting the room. And in version 0 of IOTA, the one I didn't even pass the paper design phase, I would have you get 3 Tallneck parts to complete the Tallneck. In the previous version, version 1, I had you collect 2 parts, the fins and the neck segments, and to reduce complexity because less is more. This version would only have 1 part of the Tallneck you'd have to help complete or find. And if it was going to be just one part, it was going to be the most vital and most obvious part of a Tallneck, which is the head. And Aloy figures that maybe if she fixes the Tallneck, she could use the Tallneck to use its EMP to reboot and resuscitate the Cauldron and get out. So fix the Tallneck becomes your main objective. Thanks to that aftershock that happened, the shield also failed, and you can now enter that production area that was shielded off before. So you go to this production area, liberate the head, and serve it back to the core, where it gets installed onto the Tallneck. And while standing on there, you trigger its EMP, reboot the facility, and you get lifted out. And complete your quest. So, and when this high-level blockout was finished and ready to be pitched to the game director, he didn't really like it. Because according to Horizon lore, machines get assembled in the core room, and that meant that Tallneck room I had was also a core room, which meant we had 2 cores, which wasn't great, which is weird. And to add to that, the narrative team wanted to use the double core idea for a main quest. So I had to abandon this idea. So what worked and what didn't. Serving the Tallneck head was pretty cool. And I was pretty happy with the reduced level size. Again, narrative didn't really work, so I'd have to go back to the drawing table. And the sooner you start with your high-level blockout, the sooner you realize your paper design is potentially flawed or didn't translate it well into 3D. So fail early and reiterate to save yourself some time and pain later on. And all that failing also had a big downside, because with deadlines creeping ever closer and me still being stuck in paper design phase, running out of ideas fast, I kind of got the feeling that I didn't really belong at Guerrilla, that I was the imposter. And everyone has had this at some point, and if they say they didn't, they're lying. What really helped me get out of this pit was Cauldron 4, because I moved Cauldron IOTA to the site, started working Cauldron 4, and what worked really well for me was that I designed Cauldron 4 around this big set piece. I created this puzzle where you have to manipulate this big robotic arm, and this is halfway the level. And then building this level, I started with this room and then branched out to backwards, basically. I designed this Cauldron backwards, and I figured I might be able to use the same technique for Cauldron IOTA. So finally, things slowly started to click for me, and I came up with this paper design. And spoiler, this is the final. Here's one quick slide to show you the evolution of paper designs. And a takeaway, because it's an important one, I think. The imposter syndrome is very, very real. But don't let it get you down. And with this being the version that made it into the final game, I'm going to fly through the blockout stage straight to first playable, pre-first art pass. And first playable means that your level has all the elements it needs and your quest is fully progressible. And once your level is in this stage, it will be implemented into the regular external playtests to create feedback. And this is important because I'm going to show you this level in the same order I built it in, set piece to set piece, room to room, so it wouldn't be chronological like the ones I showed you before, but hopefully it's not too confusing. So I started with the room that would house that big sequence, that big Tallneck exit sequence, the core. Around this time, we also had the core assembly arm, which is holding the Tallneck, and it replaced the light weavers from Zero Dawn to make the machine's creation a bit more mechanical and more grounded and less fantastical and more less magical. You would also see a Tallneck head that never reached its body, laying on the floor in an effort to do some environmental storytelling and hopefully foreshadow what's to come, you riding that Tallneck head. Then this is the placeholder boss that's a Zero Dawn machine, and it would will be replaced with the rollerback machine as it comes online. So you kill the machine, you kill the boss, you hack the core to get your overrides. Thinking players hopefully making players think that they've finished the Cauldron, which they did, according to feedback. So that's good. But this time, the core platform grinds to a halt because there's an unfinished Tallneck in the way. So no more Earthquake, but an unfinished Tallneck. Your quest would become find another way out of the Cauldron. Then I carried over the going underneath the core section from my previous blockout and extended it a bit with something I did during prototyping. And then a bit like a painter, I went to work on a whole different section. And I knew I wanted to carry over the Tallneck head sequence as well. So this is what I came up with. I put it into a wrecking arm and made sure you had the best possible view as you enter the space, basically. Then I created the path the head would take to the core. And this path had a subtle bend in it, so you couldn't exactly predict how long this ride was going to be. And as you turn the corner, you could see the core behind an energy shield. And organics like alloy can't pass through shields. So you have to get off at any point of the ride and find a way around it. And you find this tunnel that leads you back to the core. And while you are in this tunnel, you could hear the assembly sounds around you. And when you open the tunnel, you'd be just in time to see the final seconds of assembly. And this way, we could skip in this potentially super expensive assembly scene. And the view I wanted you to have of this of the space of the Tallneck dictated the way this tunnel connected to the previous room. And in my very first blockout of this section, I had you come in from a whole other angle. And I was going to make the same mistake I did with Cauldron U, because you go to the core like this, but the Tallneck's head you're supposed to follow would go through this, so people would get confused, which wasn't nice. And I was also going to do this weird going down to only climb back up again, like I did in the previous blockout, which also wasn't great. And the view is the view wasn't as epic as the one I ended up with, and climbing up a Tallneck's butt wasn't too glorious. Right, so back to the mock-up. Aloy would realize that she would need the Tallneck's EMP to hopefully get out of the Cauldron, because the machine arm that's holding the Tallneck is also broken, also still holding the Tallneck. So she climbs up to the Tallneck's head to trigger its EMP. And also, what I forgot to mention, further scope reduction threatened the existence of the sequence, because I was told I could have a cinematic in each of my Cauldron, and I would use these cinematics for this, for example, to introduce machines or to have my Tallneck exit. But scope reductions threatened those, but luckily tech design came in to save the sequence. Inserting a quick takeaway, because from the very start of the project, I grabbed all the people who worked on Cauldrons, got together once a week. And what really helped me here was that I was able to share ownership of the Cauldron. So when we had issues with cinematics, for example, everyone felt the urge and obligation to keep this project afloat. Right, so back to the beginning of the level, because I could now work to what I've already figured out, the middle part and the end. Again, starting with an epic overview of the space. And you would go down, navigate through the tunnel, the broken tunnel, to witness the destruction of the Cauldron from up close, in an effort to do some environmental storytelling. Something that was super skippable when we introduced the glider, as shown by this playtester, but at this stage of the project, it was deemed acceptable. So the big set pieces in this room would be the frame smelters I resurrected from my first blockout. And to get across the chasm, you'd have to traverse these moving machine printers as they were turning out machine frames. And fun fact, they were supposed to be printing Tallneck frames, again, to foreshadow what is to come. But we didn't have budget for Tallneck parts, so they became Thunderjaw parts instead, but no one ever notices anyway, so. I wanted to have, after this intense smelter climb and before opening it up with the core, with the initial Tallneck refuel, I wanted to have a bit of a smaller space, which is a bit of a design trick. If you go small and then big, the big impact hits harder. But we ended up opening it up a bit anyway because we were short on combat encounters. Now I needed to connect the underneath the core section to the Tallneck head section. And I had you see the Tallneck from behind this energy shield to hopefully recreate some spatial awareness, to have players realize that they are now behind the shield without having to open the map. I added some reversible elements to get the players up there. And I was using these yellow mock-up pieces to highlight where players would need to go because they didn't have a lighting pass yet. And designers at Guerrilla aren't allowed to use lighting for reasons. The Tallneck head would be around this corner, hidden until I wanted you to see it. Then with everything in, I needed to make sure the cauldron fitted underneath the world, and that dictated how long the tunnel leading into the cauldron would be. And then the biggest takeaway, I think the most important takeaway, is design backwards or around set pieces. I think if you figure out your big story beats first, you can kind of work your way backwards to and try to get all the elements you need to get to that point. All right, so after the first pass, we go to second pass. And after a bunch of playtests, we amassed a bunch of feedback. And these were the must fixes for Cauldrons in general and Cauldron IOTA. So dying in games is never fun, and Cauldron scored the highest on player deaths. So that's something I really need to fix. Core room sizes were deemed too small to comfortably fight machines in or Horizon Forbidden West bosses. And some people actually missed the entire initial Tallneck refuel. So there's also something we needed to address. So, player deaths. I had a lot of pits that would insta-kill you, and not because I hate you, but because I thought Cauldrons weren't supposed to be the very human-friendly. Luckily, that was one of the more easier things to fix, because we just plugged the most likeliest holes with these environmental pieces. Core room sizes were scaled up by 1.5. And about the initial Tallneck reveal people missed, we started toying around with camera magnets, which you might see in this video. It's a bit hard to see, but they're super janky and wonky. So we ended up replacing it with an actual sequence, which made sure no one missed the initial Tallneck reveal, ever. And we also added a disc-like frame where the Tallneck's head would be, because a completely decapitated Tallneck just looks way too brutal. And finally, at the end of the project, we have some time for polishing our stuff. And note this is like an entire year of the project, where only bugs are allowed to be fixed. And playtests are invaluable, as you already might know. And playtest is going to do, let me try to get this thing to play. It's not playing, it's fine. Playtest is going to do stuff you couldn't predict, and there was this one playtester that as soon as the shields went through the head went through the shields, the player started backtracking the entire Cauldron. That's something the Cauldron wasn't made for at all. Videos are failing. Okay. This one, yeah. Yep, thank you. Yep. Okay. Yes, please. Yeah, wonderful. So, as I was saying, as soon as the head went through the shield, this playtester backtracked the entire thing, which wasn't what this level was made for. He did get pretty far, though. And it was fixed by adding this super white, bright light around the door that leads you to the core, among other things. I also added grapple points that would pop these indicators as soon as you got in range to help you help me point the way to the core door. And once you got off the Tallneck, a quest marker would appear on the Tallneck, and I would re-pop the quest step. And then finally, after 4 years of hard work by a lot of people, we ended up with something like this.
Some fresh air again. View isn't too bad either.
And fun fact, designers at Guerrilla have the power to set the time of day, so I always made sure you had the nicest time of day when you exited the Cauldron. And to wrap up this talk and summarize the takeaways, use your pre-production time well. Make sure to create this library of stuff you can cherry pick from during production. Bigger doesn't equal better, resistant tendency to overwhelm players. Be adaptable, because game development is full of surprises and you'll need to be flexible. Fail early. It's generally better to fail as soon as possible. Imposter syndrome is very real, but don't let it get you down. Everyone has had it at some point, at least. Get a lot of people involved to share that ownership of your levels, to get people to fight for your level in moments of need. And if you're stuck on your level design, move on to something else, or start designing backwards. To end this off, I couldn't have made Cauldrons without these wonderful people at Guerrilla. My contacts are on there as well, so if you like to reach out to me, I'll try to answer any of your questions if I'm able to. Thank you. I think we have some time for Q&A still. Okay.
Thank you, Dennis. That was great. Sometimes I worry about watching talks about games I haven't played yet, spoilers, but this time I think I'll appreciate it even more. We have a few minutes for Q&A, so if you have any questions, please raise your hand and we'll make sure you get a microphone. There's one over there.
I'll also be outside if you have any more questions.
Hello, and congratulations on the amazing game you produced and helped design. As someone who played both the original game and this one, as well as the DLCs, how do you feel like the next step for a series as Horizon could be? Because you're on the vanguard of graphic fidelity, and you have set the world Aloy lives in. How do you feel the series can reach new heights? And another question: did you design the water level, the water cauldron as well?
All right. So the first question is very easy for me to answer because I can't tell you anything about it, of course.
Fantastic.
The second part is yes. I also done the water cauldron.
And did a water cauldron was like, how do you replicate the verticality that the level has in, for instance, your paper first draft?
That's a good question. It was very hard, actually. So my paper designs tend to not really have that detail in there, I think. I tried splitting it up in different levels, but it was very hard to communicate what I wanted to do to my lead and director. So I think if your paper designs So my paper designs, as you might have noticed, are just scribbles on paper with markers and colored markers and annotations. I took out the annotations for simplicity sake. But it's generally with the paper design, I kind of just talk the lead through. So it isn't about the details, it's more about the story beats you're trying to hit, and like there's this challenge here, this is here, and then this happens, and you build up to this, and that's enough, at least for my lead at Guerrilla. And then it's the verticality you try to put in your high-level blockouts version. So that's where that come in. So it's all for Cauldron Kappa, the water cauldron. For me, it was part of the design phase, because I was also trying to figure out what I wanted to do. In my paper design, this is a puzzle room, basically, but I needed to figure out, I knew I wanted to use the water levels, but I needed to figure that out as I was going.
Thank you so much.
Good question, thank you.
There's one more question here.
Thank you for a great talk and
Thanks.
amazing game. First of all, I wanted to ask you if you could share some insights on kind of what worked well in the collaboration between level world design and environment art, lighting art. It's always, very interconnected, right?
So something I learned very early on is that I was this annoying level designer that went to my environment artist once a day, and not to be super controlling, but I felt it helped prevent them making mistakes, or mistakes as in sometimes stuff gets lost in translation. So I always talk them through the level. I talk them through the high-level blockout, tell them what I envision the level, I think it would be looking like. And of course, they have their own vision as well, but to avoid sidelines being broken, for example, something that happened in Column U, when I didn't do these daily checkups with them, they would have these grand pieces that would block sidelines, for example, which looked great, but that kind of ruined my intention. And doing those daily checkups really helped prevent those kind of mistakes and helped prevent them from having to do stuff anew. So that was really nice. I did the same thing with level lighting, actually. Walked through the entire thing. What was great about the artists Guerrilla, they always top my expectations. Like, they always make stuff way better than I had in mind. So I think that answers your question, hopefully. Right. Thanks. More questions?
Hey, great talk. So when you're finished with these levels, right, do you look at them and they're like, okay, they're perfect and I wouldn't change them anymore? Or do you look back at them and you're like, I could have done this differently? Like, when do you finish, figuring out what's...
Yeah, it's never done. It's,
Okay.
as you might know, but luckily we have producers that are really strict about timing and budget. So those are the people that tell me it needs to stop. We're now entering the next phase. Those people are the ones that help us finish games, ship games. So they are also the people that triage tasks and bugs at some point. So at some point, that's annoying about game development. You know there's still so many bugs in the game, but you're not allowed to fix them anymore, or maybe for a patch or something. So if it weren't for them, I would still be working on them probably. And even if I play the games myself, I only see all the mistakes I've made, and oof, this is a bug I've never seen. You must recognize this.
Thank you so much, Dennis.
Thank you.